Okay, thanks. And we'll go to audience question 2, and Haney will be taking that first.
We'll maybe divert from oil a little bit, but it is related. In terms of the crisis of climate change, I'd love to have your opinion, each of you, what you feel. Do you believe the fact that I believe that climate change is something that we as human beings on this planet contribute to? And what kind of role does the city have to mitigate that? And what kind of steps are you willing to take in terms of investment, financial and otherwise? What are, within the minute you have to answer, what are your feelings about, again, the role of the city, if you believe that climate change is real, to mitigate? And I'll just give an example. Just today there was a press release about the city of Palo Alto putting into the building code that any new construction will require 220 volts so that future electric vehicle charging stations, for instance, could be installed in residential garages. So if you could use your minute of time to just talk about your feeling about the reality of climate change and how we can mitigate it as a community.
Thanks, Nancy. Haney's first up.
Thank you, Nancy. To answer the first part of your question, do I believe that we are impacting as we live every day, and the way we live, do we impact climate change or causing it? Yes, I believe that the data on that is accurate. As far as the role of the city to mitigate and help out, I think the example that you mentioned, that's something that our city should consider. But I think the city, based on a lot of things that you brought to the city, I think has implemented some things that helps us go down the path of being more protective of our environment. I think one of the other issues that I've looked into and talked to with our city manager is potentially having solar panels in our actual city buildings, to the extent that the buildings are able to handle, and I think my understanding is that they just haven't gone through the process of getting proposals to do it. The other thing is applying other construction methods, and I'm not sure if imposing them is the right thing to do, but at least have them available, have the ability for the city to cooperate and provide some kind of assistance, whether it's through permit assistance or other assistance for ideas, for example, that Robert Fortunato put in his house, and the Green Idea House, that we can use in other properties, whether it's city-built properties or just regular private properties that are being built, and just make sure that that information is available for us. So other people that haven't done the homework that you've done, Dency, and that you've done, Robert, can learn from the things that we have applied here in our city, and it advances, again, our brand for our city to be the green city, and basically promote that brand so other people can learn from us, and hopefully that applies to other cities in the South Bay and other cities in California as well.
Thanks, Haney. Greg?
Thank you. Most recent report came out last week from the United Nations indicating that 95% certainty that the human element has a role to play in climate change. So yes, we have a role in this, and we obviously need to adjust our living to address that role. What does an individual city do? What can they do? As some of the things that were mentioned in Robert's house, I was lucky enough to go in and see that beautiful home, are incentives. What are the incentives that the city can provide for people to build homes that are energy efficient? The governor's, 1,000 roofs, or I think it was 1,000 roofs, solar panels, more than 1,000, million roofs, I'm sorry, million roof solar panels, convert some of our energy. Where I do kind of draw the line in the sense of, I don't want to go into someone else's pocket and tell them you have to spend money on this. I want to provide incentives that make it worthwhile for them to do that, because I think it's important to encourage before we mandate. Let's encourage, let's build synergy, let's see how many people are in like mind that want to do that. And then as we progress and make progress, you look at whether we need to crank down and install regulations. But I am certainly in favor of everyone making efforts to do better with the environment. The only frustrating part is the plastic bag issue. Now I have to buy plastic bags to pick up my dog poop. I buy the biodegradable ones, I do. But I used to get them for free from Vaughn's.
Okay. Thanks, Greg. Nanette?
Thank you for the question. I definitely think that, the role of every one of us here plays a role in our climate change. We need to do whatever we can to recycle and preserve our energy. The role of city government can be very important, down from our general plan to putting in more bike paths, to here putting in more bike racks down on Pier Plaza, to encourage more bicycle use and encourage people to walk encouraging options to provide incentives for businesses and homeowners to use solar paneling. As was mentioned, Robert Fortunato has his greenhouse. He'll be the first to tell you it's economically a viable thing to do and could help our city save some money as well. I think the city should sit down and talk to leaders, especially members of our former Green Task Force, to get ideas, because we have innovators and we have experts, environmental experts, and people who have so much experience on this that can be a real source of knowledge for us on what we can do as a city to help out with the climate change issue and what we can do to reduce, our carbon footprint.
Thanks, Nanette. John?
Thank you. First of all, I think that it's kind of interesting that we get challenged in Hermosa on environmental issues. Hermosa and the people who live in this city have been environmentalists and conservationists long before it was popular. We've been taking care of a beach, we've been taking care of an ocean, we are responsible people. We're the people who are picking up the trash in the park and doing the recycling. That's just part of the way we are and the part of the way we raise our families. So I don't think that we're in the shape that a lot of other people are. Now, Denzi, to your question, I'm pretty convinced, but I noticed that in the climate studies, the last 15 years all of a sudden aren't matching up with the models that they said and things, and that raises some concerns in my mind. That doesn't make me a denier, but it does mean I have concerns. Pardon me. Now, in Hermosa, the idea of our #1 goal being lowering our carbon footprint sounds wonderful, doesn't it? It makes us almost like Santa Monica. The problem is that Hermosa Beach is 1.4 square miles. If we lower our carbon footprint to absolutely zero and get all our power from the Vetter windmill, it's not going to make any difference to anything. We're talking about bike racks and riding our bikes. We have more bicyclists in this town than we have dogs. You can't go downtown and find room for another bike. People walk everywhere. The longest bike ride in this town is half a mile from one end to the other. So we're already doing lots of things. Now, do we want to take that and say every building that's get built now has to justify its carbon footprint? Everybody who wants to open a restaurant has to justify their carbon footprint. When we want to redo City Hall, we have to justify our carbon footprint. I don't think that necessarily is the best. It has to be our #1 priority. Now, if solar panels on this building make economic sense for the city, absolutely. You're damn right we get them.
You can summarize.
Sure. But if you want everybody in the city to kick in to subsidize solar panels for your home, not so much. So I'm all for anything we can do to help the environment, but I think it has to be seen in the context of the city we live in.
Thanks, John. Jeff?
Thank you, Al. First, I want to thank Greg for his new contribution to our local economy. With this dog. It was a joke, folks. At any rate, and I want to thank John for teeing me up on this one because let me tell you, sea level rise is a fact. Is it a fact? Increased storm events, fact. Subsidence to our local tidal areas, fact. These are all facts. They affect our life every day. And I'm glad Denzi mentioned the electric charging stations, which we had the wisdom to put in when we redid Upper Pier Avenue. And just take a look. They've only been in operation for, what, about a year now. They have already brought people to our community who spend 4 hours while they're charging, spending money in our community. They've increased the sale of electric vehicles within our community. I think the impacts are there, I mean, in terms of the positive impacts. And we made, and let's be clear, we have made as a city a commitment to be carbon neutral. It's a bold statement. It needs to be followed up with bold actions that will pay off for us in the long run. I mean, the charging stations are a good case in point. For example, one of the things we're talking about in the city is something very simple, fleet conversion to electric vehicles. If we did that tomorrow, we would save $60,000 alone just in fuel costs saved per year. There are economic payoffs to this if we make a real commitment to carbon neutrality, and it will be a boon to our economy. It'll put us on the map. Santa Monica has made this commitment. We're in a better position than any city in the state of California to fulfill it. So I'm just saying, you know, if we do this, we become a magnet for clean energy, tech jobs, and knowledge workers, and for ecotourism. We can do this.
Thanks, Jeff. Carolyn?
All right. Well, to answer to your question, yeah, I do think we've impacted our environment globally. I do. What I think is good is that I look back from 30 years ago, there was none of that awareness. So I think it's good that there is awareness now, and I think that in our daily lives, we actually do think about this, where we didn't 30 years ago. So when we talk about development in our town, this whole building is pretty much nearing the end of its useful life, and so we will end up doing some kind of rebuild. And so if there are opportunities to do things in ways that are smart, environmentally aware, and save us money, and we all talk about solar panels because we know the cost of electricity is enormous, I think that's all good. And it does mesh with the goal of the city. It is to be carbon neutral. So it all does work, and I'm in agreement.
Thanks, Carolyn.